G'day there, Wealth Press traders, investors, subscribers, and viewers. My guest today is Michael Auerback. He is the president of Subversive. Michael, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Michael, so Subversive Capital is a special purpose acquisition corporation, better known as a SPAC, one of the hottest asset classes of the century. Your particular SPAC is particularly interesting because you're going to merge it with a cannabis company that involves Jay-Z as the future chief visionary officer. Can you give us an overview of the company and the business strategy and how all this happened?
Sure. Yeah. So, my partner and I, we raised $575 million in Canada's largest SPAC ever last summer with the intention to acquire one or more U.S. cannabis assets with a real focus on California. So we identified the two best, well-equipped, vertically integrated companies, Caliva and Left Coast Ventures, to create the largest omni-channel platform in the state. As well as we expanded Caliva's existing relationship with Jay-Z by acquiring the other 50% of their joint venture and bringing Jay-Z on as a real executive as chief visionary officer responsible for our house of brands. And then we also signed an exclusive agreement with Jay-Z's entertainment powerhouse, Roc Nation, which gives us exclusive access to all of their artists and athletes. And we intend to launch additional brands over the coming months with those with that roster of talent.
Sure. And what is Caliva's particular sort of corporate incarnation at this point?
So Caliva is one of the the most robust vertically integrated platforms in the state. They have a number of brands. They have a DTC platform, GoCaliva.com, which is their delivery platform. And we merged them with Left Coast Ventures as part of this transaction, which brings a number of assets, including distribution, manufacturing, cultivation, and low cost sourcing of distillate. We own, as part of this transaction, the largest distillate manufacturer in the state. Something like 20 to 25% of all distillate in the state is produced by Left Coast Ventures. And so rather than wholesale out that distillate to other brands, we'll be inserting that distillate into our own brands, being able to capture a significant margin.
So is the intent to focus exclusively on the state of California, or is that just the first step?
Yeah, we're considered a super state operator. California is the tip of the spear and the largest cannabis economy, not just in the US, but in the world. And it's a fragmented market. Nobody has more than, I think, 7% market share. And so with our balance sheet and the companies that we're putting together in partnership with Jay-Z, we plan to consolidate and dominate that market before we expand outward. We're also not going to do what the MSOs have done, which is to create very expensive duplicative assets in other states. We believe that the end of prohibition is 12 to 24 months away, and that eventually there'll be interstate commerce. So cannabis will be grown in California, Arizona, Nevada, and shipped across state lines. And the brands will come from Southern California and New York. So New York is definitely the next stop for us in terms of expansion.
Can you tell me about the revenue footprint of each of these companies at this point in time and where you see that going in the near term?
Sure. So the combined revenue of both companies for the calendar year 2020, which just ended, was approximately $185 million. I think slightly more than that, which is not, as for the combined company, that's the number one company in terms of revenue in the state of California. We anticipate organically doing well above $330 million in 2021. But because of the strength of our balance sheet, we are anticipating significant M&A. So that number will be considerably higher towards the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And so how did you involve Jay-Z? Is he like an original founding partner with you, or did you somehow recruit him to this idea?
So Caliva actually had an existing relationship with Jay-Z to launch the brand Monogram, which is Jay-Z's brand that launched a few weeks ago. So as part of that relationship, I met with Jay-Z a couple of months ago to see what his appetite would be in participating in this transaction in a more significant way, as opposed to just as a joint venture partner of one of our targets. And he was really excited to be a part of something that was going to be generational. He chose our name, the parent company, to really, project that we're building the first 100-year company in this industry. And he's excited to build upon the successful launch of Monogram and launch additional brands under the house of brands.
Sure.
So he's heavily involved in every aspect of the business and its decision making.
Great. So I'm intrigued by your comment that interstate commerce is imminent and that you're positioning the company to service an interstate commerce from California. How soon do you think that happens? What needs to change besides the obvious for that to happen?
Yeah, so eventually cannabis will be regulated like alcohol and tobacco, probably more so like alcohol than tobacco, but certainly that will be the regulatory regime. And so disallowing interstate commerce will be a violation of the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. That's not how I think prohibition will end initially. So I think over the next 12 to 24 months, it will be in phases. The first phase will be some additional guidance coming out of, or new guidance coming out of the Justice Department under the Biden administration with Attorney General Merrick Garland, presenting something similar to the Cole memo that will initially get the listing agencies at the very least comfortable with listing US names. And we'll be one of the first names to list on the NASDAQ or the NYSE because we're currently listed on one of the senior exchanges in Canada. Legislatively, now that the Democrats have controlled both chambers of Congress and the White House, we'll have something a tad more progressive than the States Act and SAFE Act, probably not as progressive as the MORE Act, but something that will finally put a nail in the coffin of prohibition. And luckily, because the Democrats have taken control, whatever bill is passed will not only end prohibition, removing cannabis from the CSA and removing the federal prohibition of cannabis, but we'll also have a number of social justice components that the MORE Act specifically spells out, which was spearheaded by Vice President Kamala Harris, apologies. And so we're excited about that because at the parent company, we have actually set aside $10 million to begin to invest real equity into communities of color and entrepreneurs of color, which those communities have been most harmed by the prohibition of cannabis, disproportionately targeted over the past 60 years since Nixon signed the CSA.
So can investors buy this SPAC right now?
Yes, now is the time to buy. This stock is going to significantly re-rate on Friday at closing. We've already, with our upsize pipe and non-redemption agreement, we've already, guaranteed $100 million on the balance sheet. We've cycled through over $400 million of our float. We anticipate having well in excess of $300 million on the balance sheet on closing on Friday.
Fantastic. All right, Michael, that's a great introduction. I'm going to look forward to following this story, and I'm going to talk to you more about it as it evolves. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Have a great day.